I'm Greg Guma, and this is the People's Republic. This week, Orwellian Days. Are we there yet? And can we get out? I've been arguing with friends lately about the nature of propaganda, especially when the messages tend to suit our own biases. For example, RT, Russia's English-language TV network. Some people think it's great, more fair and balanced than CNN or the New York Times. But is it really a reliable alternative to U.S. mainstream media? Is its selective coverage, which sometimes does include stories being downplayed or ignored in U.S. corporate outlets, is it more fair and accurate? Or is it just more comforting and convenient? More and more people are becoming alienated, cynical, distrustful of all institutions, including the press, and ready to reject any news that makes them uncomfortable. Instead, they retreat into prejudices, preconceived notions, and tribal beliefs. And too much of mass and social media reinforces many less than helpful narratives and tendencies. You know the old adage about not noticing when conditions are getting dangerous? The one about the frog and the frying pan? Well, the heat is rising fast, and we're frying our own minds. But most people, hunkered down with comforting illusions, think it's just a phase, and surely not a high priority. Sure, a phase that's been underway for decades, the long, slow slide into what used to be called friendly fascism. But it's getting less friendly and more deadly every day. Illiberalism, that's one of the current euphemisms, but actually a global cultural counter-revolution, an authoritarian surge, along with the emergence of a league of extraordinary despots. But it's been coming for a while. And like a castaway in some sci-fi novel, I was once transported to such an Orwellian future, and lived to tell the tale. On the big screen above us, beautiful people demonstrated their prowess. We were sitting in the communications center, waiting for printouts to tell us what they had done before organizing reports for mass consumption. Outside, people were freezing in the snow as they waited for buses. Their only choice was to go to another event or try to get home. The area was known as the competition zone, a corporate state created for one purpose: to showcase these glorious competitors. Freedom was a foreign idea. No one was more free than the laminated identification cards hanging around your neck allowed. Visitors were more restricted than anyone. They saw only what they paid for, and had to wait in long lines for food, transportation, or tickets to more events. They were often uncomfortable and hungry, yet they felt privileged to be admitted into the zone. Citizens were categorized by their function within the organizing committee's bureaucracy. Those who merely served, in jobs like cooking, driving, and cleaning, wore green and brown tags. They could travel between their homes and work, but they were rarely permitted into events. Their contacts with visitors were also limited. To visit them from outside the zone, friends and families had to be extensively screened. Most people knew little about how the zone was run, about the inner community of diplomats, competitors, and corporate officials they served. Yet each night they watched the exploits of this elite on television. The zone, a closed and classified place where most bad news went unreported, and a tiny in-group called the shots through mass media and computers, was no futuristic fantasy. It was Lake Placid in early 1980, a full 4 years before 1984. In a sleepy little community covered with artificial snow, the Olympics had created a temporary society. 2,000 athletes and their entourages were its royalty, role models for thousands of spectators, townspeople, and journalists. This convergence resulted in an ad hoc dictatorship managed by several public and private police forces and a political leadership that combined local business honchos and an international governing committee. They dominated a population all too willing to submit to arbitrary authority. Even back then, Lake Placid felt like a preview of things to come. Not quite George Orwell's 1984, but uncomfortably close. In Orwell's fantasy, society was ruled by Big Brother. It wasn't a computer, but rather the collective expression of the party. And the party? It was an autonomous bureaucracy and surveillance state interested in perpetuating itself as a hierarchy. In this possible future, the people had become insignificant, without the power, as Orwell put it, grasping what the world could be other than it is. The concepts of freedom and equality were perverted by a ruthless newspeak perpetuated by the party through the media. A good thinker was someone who followed orders without thinking. Crime stop was the instinctual avoidance of any dangerous thought. And doublethink was the constant distortion of reality to maintain the party's image of infallibility. Writing in the late 1940s, Orwell was imagining what could happen in just 30 years. By most measures, we are not there yet, but we are getting close. We do face a real danger that concepts like freedom and equality will be distorted by an updated newspeak, a Trumpian version promoted by the administration and its allies through their minions and their media. We have Trumpian good thinkers, sycophantic surrogates who follow his lead without thinking. And crime stop, that's the instinctual avoidance of dangerous thought. And doublethink, the constant distortion of reality to maintain the leader's image of infallibility. Orwellian concepts are surfacing again in a postmodern reality TV form. Our fast food culture is also taking a toll. Much of what goes viral further fragments culture and thought, promoting a cynicism that reinforces inaction. Instead of true diversity, we have the mass illusion that a choice between appropriate opinions curated by editors and networks is the essence of free speech. In reality, ideas are so constrained and self-centered that what's left is really as diverse as two brands of toothpaste. When the Bill of Rights was ratified, the notion that freedom of speech and the press would be protected meant that the personal right of self-expression could not be repressed by the government. James Madison, author of the First Amendment, warned that the greatest danger to liberty was a majority would use its power to repress everyone else. Yet the evolution of mass media and the corporate domination of economic life have made these choicest privileges almost obsolete. You don't even need a majority. As community life unravels and more institutions fall into disrepute, media have become one of the few things left that could potentially facilitate some needed social cohesion. Yet instead, they sell conflict and crisis. It's not quite Crime Stop, but it does appeal to some of the basest instincts and fuel even more alienation and division. What most mass media bring the public is a series of images and anecdotes that cumulatively define a way of life. Both news and entertainment contribute to the illusion that competing, consuming, and accumulating are at the core of our human aspirations. Each day we are repeatedly shown and told that culture and politics are corrupt, that war is imminent or escalating somewhere, that violence is random and pervasive, and yet that experts have all the answers. Countless programs celebrate youth, violence, repressed sexuality, and the lives of celebrities. Between the official program content are a series of intensely packaged sales pitches. The messages wash over us as if we are wandering in an endless virtual mall searching for fulfillment as society crumbles. In 1980, Ralph Nader called the race for president at that time between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan a choice between mediocrity and menace. It was funny, but now we can see what real menace looks like. Is Trumpism what Orwell basically warned us about? There are certainly similarities. Like Trump, you can't talk back to Big Brother, and he rarely gives you the truth, just doublespeak and fake news. So are we there yet, at the threshold of fascism? Kind of. More important, is there a way out, or is it too late? Will menace win this time? Is there still time to save the environment, reclaim self-government, restore communities, and protect human rights? What does the future hold? Here are two possibilities. It could be summer in Los Angeles in 2024, the end of Donald Trump's second term. The freeways are slow-moving parking lots for the Olympics. Millions of people hike around in the heat or use bikes and cycles to get to work. It's difficult with all the checkpoints, not to mention the extra high security at the airports. Thousands of police, not to mention the military, are on the lookout for terrorists, smugglers, protesters, cultists, gangs, thieves, and anyone who doesn't have the money to burn or a ticket to the games. Cash isn't much good, and gas has become so expensive that suburban highways are almost empty. Security is tight and hard to avoid, on or offline. There are cameras everywhere, and every purchase and move most people make is being tracked by the state. Still, there are 4 bombings in the first week of the games. There's also another kind of human tragedy. 4 runners collapsed during preliminary rounds as a result of a toxic mix, heat and pollution. Despite Trump's very low approval on the West Coast, in 2020 he pulled off another Electoral College magic trick by turning Elizabeth Warren into a godless socialist witch. The president eventually visits LA in 2024 to witness the spectacle and drops dead suddenly after eating too many hot dogs. This sparks a riot, closely followed by a bomb blast at the Media Command Center, and then the earth begins to shake. That's one scenario, but it could also be a peaceful summer in your hometown. People aren't as preoccupied with conflict and spectacle as they used to be. The change began with the young and in the schools. Just in time, people began to understand that what they saw on their screens was just one version of reality and not the real thing. Malls are closing, but small and independent businesses are making a comeback. Some located in restored neighborhoods are emerging out of buyers' co-ops. Major corporations still sell mostly online, but their market dominance is starting to falter. People are changing in subtle but important ways. They are becoming more discriminating, depending more on one another than either the media or the government. Hey, it could still happen. This is Greg Guma from the People's Republic.